You're listening to Raising Anchor on 990 WBOB. Welcome to the Raising Anchor Soccer Show with Matt Entrican and Jason Carey. Your home for news, analysis, and everything Rhode Island FC. Each week, they take you inside the locker room, inside the tactics, and inside the storyline shaping RIFC. Now, here's Matt and Jason.
Rhode Island FC earns 2 points in their final round of Prinx Tires Cup action, drawing 1-1 against Brooklyn FC before winning the additional point in penalties that saw Koke Vegas with an absolutely incredible performance in the net and from the spot. We're going to talk about so much that went on in this. We're going to talk about the overall implications of the tournament with Rhode Island FC now bowing out. What does this game mean? What does the result look like? And what does the momentum that happens beyond the results on the pitch on Saturday do for this amber and blue? And of course, you can bet we're going to talk some red cards. Joining me as always, Mr. Jason Carey. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing pretty good. You know, it's been a while since I've been a Debbie Downer. RIP Sam Neill, Jurassic Park, Event Horizon, and The Mouth of Madness. Fantastic movies. We lost a good one today.
You know, I forgot that that's one of your favorite things to do. We should be bringing that back, because why not start a show with so much joy by bringing up so much death?
It's a celebration of life. Those are some great movies there, you know.
Speaking of celebrating, let's get into talking about this World Cup minute, as we've been talking throughout our time here on the show. What do you want to open up with, buddy?
I mean, we saw England, Norway, Argentina, Switzerland this weekend. Some fun games. Maybe not the result I was looking for per se. You know, being a bit of an Erling Haaland stand, I was kind of hoping Norway could get that result there. Apparently, he was maybe dealing with a bit of a health bug, and maybe Sorloth wishes he could take back that non-pass there. But I mean, this England team is looking really good. Both Kane and Jude have 6 goals each. I think Argentina is going to be scared unless VAR is going to be there to save them. We'll kind of see what that looks like.
Do you know Argentina, by the way, the only team in the World Cup that has not had a VAR intervention so far in the tournament? I know last week we talked about how they also have the highest foul to card conversion. We can talk about the Argentinian entire refereeing squad for that France match. I mean, there's been a lot of things, but I think you're right. I think the question I have for you then is talking about Norway now going out. They were the most recent version of the dark horse. Last Morocco, now Norway. With 4 teams left, France, Spain, England, and Argentina. Who's the dark horse at this point?
It's hard to say, because these are all like top teams in the world, right? So they should all be able to go toe to toe to each other. I think the favorites are probably France, Argentina, but I wouldn't put anything past Spain or England to kind of maybe upset, if you will, one of those matches. I think these are very like even matches to a certain extent, if you will.
Well, we'll have to find out as those semifinals take place this Tuesday and Wednesday, both of them at 3 p.m. Eastern. You know, I've joked with people on the side. I don't think we've brought it up in the show as we've been going through this World Cup cycle. Not a big fan of how, as a host country, now granted, all 3 host countries are now out of the tournament, all going out at the same time, not really conducive to watching the sport in our nation, considering it's at 3 p.m. Eastern or 12 o'clock Pacific time. This doesn't feel like this was geared to us as hosting at all.
Definitely not. These last rounds, they feel like they're aimed at the European audience. So, I mean, maybe they knew that we would not make it this far or made sure that we didn't. I don't know. But come on, at least 5 o'clock, right? That's still make the Europeans stay up late.
If a European team is still in this, or European fans of said European team is still in this, like, you're going to watch it. And with these big names, everyone everywhere is going to tune in. I have been up at 2 a.m. to watch games for teams that I didn't care about or could probably not pronounce and spell the correct way on first
go. What were some of those South Africa games, like 4 a.m. or something? Like,
yeah.
What?
I think there was a Qatar game where it was like 2 a.m. is the start time. Like, I'm just saying, as the host nation, these should have been, we want to talk about growing the game. We want to talk about getting a bump. And there's a mailbag question we're going to talk about a little later about the World Cup cycle and the bump that we're supposed to get from that. You're not getting people to show up and watch these games at 3 o'clock. They're going to be at their desks at best, or they're going to be waiting for the highlights or just like the Google score indicator to let you know. This is a shame, and I think we need to prioritize whoever the host country is. I think we need to prioritize that better in the future.
Absolutely. And then looking towards the future, apparently Infantino's saying they're considering 64 teams for the 2030 World Cup.
Big mistake. This is a terrible idea, and not because I don't want to see it.
Because you don't want to see Italy in the World Cup again?
No, they still won't make it anyway. No, it's because like when you do things like this, like think about all the things we've learned from the Prinx Tires Cup action, right? Like there are building blocks to make a better tournament. I think this is just too fast. I do think it would have been inevitable to not get to 64 teams. That was always the next, incarnation of this. But the problem is it's more like, okay, what did we learn? And yeah, you can say that, well, there's 4 years to figure that out, but you might need 2 to 3 cycles to make sure that you get this right. Jumping and springboarding this that quickly, like just from a host nation logistics perspective, like that is a huge undertaking to support that much stuff all at once. I'm not sure this should have been that quickly advanced. I would have liked to have seen 2 more World Cups where we saw this number of teams, stabilize the format, and then figure out where we need to build from there.
Yeah, I think that's good too, because we also don't know if this was an anomaly, right? We did see that a lot of the smaller teams actually turned up in a big way and put up a big fight. But what if in the next round, all of a sudden it becomes where there isn't any parity, and all of a sudden you just have
like Italy again?
A bunch of giants like beating up on people, and then that's no fun.
Right. Yeah, no, that's going to be interesting. We'll have to wait and see what happens from it. Do we know when that vote goes through? Like, is there a date that's been announced yet?
I mean, FIFA is not very forthcoming with a lot of the information that they provide.
So we'll find out 15 minutes before they announce the actual matches. Perfect. That works.
Yeah.
What did you think of a certain Ted Lasso star finally getting his first start of the USL Championship season?
Yeah, it was cool to finally see Cristo Fernandez get his debut there. Finally got some minutes. There was some sort of visa issue that he had to kind of get organized. Only played about 10 minutes, came on, got a yellow card for charging the keeper. Perfect debut, right?
I mean, so yeah, and for those asking, like, well, he's been an actor, how did that not work? It's a different type of visa requirement to play as a player through the ITC and through FIFA regulations. So was on a different type of visa, needed to get that rotated through. And, you've heard of bigger clubs with a lot of money being able to get those done like overnight. El Paso Locomotive not exactly dropping coin to get their new star in there as fast as possible. I will now be really curious if we see him get at least a goal this season. Do you think there's a chance?
Ooh, I hope so. I'm gonna say a 33% chance he gets a goal.
So you're saying there's a chance. Let's get into these Prinx Tire Cup standings here now with the result on the weekend. Jason, Rhode Island FC came out victors, but it still wasn't enough.
Yeah, they ended up with a 1-1 draw against Brooklyn and got the extra point there as the tournament goes straight to penalties. They won the shootout there. It gets an extra point, 2 points there. But like you said, not enough to really springboard them. RIFC ultimately remaining in third place in the group, not picking up enough points to advance or attain a wild card spot, as Hartford ended up winning. And because we didn't beat Brooklyn outright, we weren't able to jump them.
What's funny is when I thought about that, I remember the first tiebreaker going to how you bested your opponent in the game. I thought that was wrong because we technically did not realize that since the match is recorded as a draw, it does not count, and you actually move to the next tiebreaker that can have the potential to be with that second point then, where the points should have already eliminated that. But in this case, we didn't technically beat Brooklyn, and with their higher goal differential, they remained on top. Not that any of it mattered, because neither one of these teams won the wild card. So gonna ask you now, we did the same exercise when the Open Cup was on, and then when we finally bowed out, who were the teams that we were going to root for? Looking at the rest of this tournament and the way it's going to shake out, Group 1's winner, Spokane Velocity. Group 2, Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Group 3, San Antonio FC. Group 4, Louisville City FC. Group 5, the pre-mentioned Hartford. Group 6, Charlotte Independence. And Group 7, Tampa Bay Rowdies. Who are we rooting for at this point?
I really like seeing some teams here like Spokane Velocity and Charlotte Independence. I think this is what you want from this tournament, to see that, like, hey, the parity is there. There are teams in USL 1 who can go toe-to-toe with championship teams. I mean, looking at the way they announced the matchups a few hours, we've got Rowdies versus Lou City, Independence versus Hartford, Velocity versus Switchbacks, and San Antonio versus the one and only Miami FC. Believe it or not, they are actually this year's wild card spot winner. I don't know if maybe that World Cup mojo they got from Room and Locadia coming back. I mean, they also put 5 past Sarasota, considering goals for is a very big deal here. That probably helped them. I mean, looking at these teams, I'm obviously going to root for Independence against Hartford. You know, we always.
I am curious. I mean, you always love to see Miami being an underdog in something like this, but I am curious as well in the future if being in these groups, again, learning from the format, expanding and making it better. Is it that a team that came from one of the groups that only had 5 teams, was that a better opportunity than one of these groups that had 6, or even the one that had 7 in it? I mean, 6 other clubs not making it, but 2 from one of the smallest groups. It doesn't surprise me that Miami advances on when you look at the competition there. I know FC Naples is a strong USL 1 side this season. Sarasota Paradise trying to figure themselves out. But then Sporting Jacks, I mean, they're not exactly championship level right now. No disrespect. They need a lot to work on. Miami's been doing well so far this season. Not so surprisingly, we haven't gotten points against them ourselves yet. I feel like this is the right team to be in there. What's the matchup you're the most excited to see then here?
I am kind of curious. Like you do mention that. I wonder with Miami FC, maybe they've slipped a little bit, but they've been a little bit better this year than they have in the past. I wonder if, you know, with Room back, having that stellar performance in the World Cup, does that, you know, give their defense an extra boost? Same with Locadia coming back. Does that they give their offense, like, are they maybe a team to watch out for? I'd be curious in this, especially in a one-off competition where they can just have one good performance and move on.
I think that's right. Then my final question before we go to break, it's good to see 2 teams from the USL 1 here advance, considering 2 teams are in this in its entirety. Is that an indication that this format is being successful? Or like if we had seen no USL 1 teams advance, would we have had to have rethought the structure of this? Because if every single USL 1 team doesn't make it, kind of what's the point of opening it up between the 2 leagues?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think last year we only had 1, right? I think it was Triumph that moved on.
Correct.
Greenville Triumph. So it's good to see 2 of them move on this year. So I think that means there is some success here in the format. I think with the way that it's not balanced, there's maybe still room for improvement. But overall, I do enjoy this competition, even if unfortunately we did not continue on this year.
So we will all start rooting for Miami FC, or maybe you want one of these USL 1 sides, but it should still be a fun tournament to watch through. But we've got to go to break, and when we return, we're going to talk all things about this Rhode Island FC result on the weekend and talk about how Kano prepared for the match. Don't go anywhere. It's the Raising Anchor Soccer Show. Thank you for listening to tonight's broadcast powered by Sprout Coworking. For all your business needs, large or small, visit sproutcoworking.com. Powering 990 WBOB, that's sproutcoworking.com.
Now, let's get back to the Raising Anchor Soccer Show on 990 WBOB with Matt Entrican and Jason Carey.
Getting back to this 1-1 draw between Rhode Island FC and Brooklyn FC. Want to get into some initial impressions here about the match. RIFC, like we said, not able to move on despite the 2 points. We knew going into that game, Jason, that this team was not in the driver's seat any longer, as it was going to require not only a Rhode Island FC win, but also Westchester to do some damage to Hartford Athletic. Neither one of those things end up coming true. But we also knew this game was going to be more than just the result. We knew that this was going to be a game about defending the honor of Rhode Island FC, the momentum that they've been trying to create and protect, but then also making sure that they delivered a performance in front of a home fan crowd. And I think that that's what they got on the night and then some.
Yeah, circling back to what I said last week about like Clay's comments, sometimes these games, whether or not maybe they mean anything per se in the grand scheme of like the table, like they can definitely still build momentum, right? Showing grit, determination, pushing through adversity. Three games in 7 days, kind of a bit much there, especially after that West Coast travel, the farthest that we're going to see this year. In learning that Kano's not actually a big fan of that.
He was mad. Like, he didn't say it in the post game we talked about going into Sacramento, but he absolutely had words and thoughts. Does not believe that a game of that level of distance should ever be sandwiched as a midweek rotation. And I think I have to agree with him on that.
Yeah, especially as we saw where right when Orange County came out to visit us. They then tied that in to visiting Hartford. Like those travels make sense. Like,
Right.
hey, if you're going to have them go halfway across the world, at least then have them stay close by afterwards. Like, hey, just travel an hour down the road and play the other team over there. So it's as opposed to having to go back and forth, right? Could we have not played another game on the weekend against a West Coast team to like minimize that travel and looked at a different date for this? I mean, at this point, this is something that I think the USL will have to look at scheduling. But, ultimately getting the result that we did, I think the draw +1 will kind of help be somewhat of a boost for the team here.
So it's a win, but it's not a win.
Yeah.
Well, here's Coach Cano on his opening statements and his very interesting comments about the red card. So we'll start things off with head coach Cano Smith.
So proud of the team. It was a tough week to play a good team, Orange County, to then go on our farthest trip away to play Sacramento across the country, which is ridiculous midweek, but we had to do what we had to do. And then we came home, and I thought the officiating today was top class. And to play with 10 men and still come away with a result. Happy that we can send everybody home happy with a shootout win and Koke scoring. But we're obviously out of the competition, so now we get ready for Hartford next week. Next week will be slightly altered because we need to give them 2 days off in a row after such a long week. But yeah, it's just one game at a time, which is nice, and you prepare for best you can, which Hartford will be a really, really tough team.
Anything else? You mentioned the officiating did they do a great job tonight?
Yeah, excellent.
You think so?
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, no sarcasm whatsoever?
What do you think?
I think there's sarcasm there. I just want
I thought it was excellent. I'm not a sarcastic person. I thought they were.
I'm just meeting you for the first time, so it's nice.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not
I honestly
being any way trying to be disrespectful to you. I'm just.
Oh, okay.
That's my answer. That I thought the officiating was fantastic.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
So there's so much to unpack on that. One, we did not go to this game, so let's just be upfront with everyone. We enjoyed our summer a little too much.
World Cup too.
World Cup, and so we did not go to this game. So I don't know who that reporter was, but they were a new reporter, and they got the Coach Cano special right out the gate. And I've never heard Coach Cano apologize to someone before, so lots of progress made. But for anyone that's never met Coach Cano Smith, to say he's not sarcastic it's just a cherry on top. Coach Cano hated that referee. He just couldn't afford the fine, probably, because it would have bankrupted him and maybe the entire state of Rhode Island for what he really wanted to say.
Yeah, I think at this point he has to limit what he can say, especially in this case. Like, at the end of the day, okay, fine. We have 2 players who miss a cup game next year. But like
maybe we'll talk about
yeah,
that.
man, I will see. Like it's not worth him getting the fine to complain about it. But you absolutely know that he was not happy with the ref.
Yeah, and we'll discuss the red cards a little later in the show. So for now, let's talk about how Cano approached this roster construction on the night.
Yeah, so bit of some changes here. Koke Vegas and net.
No change there.
No change there. But we saw a back line here comprised of Nick Scardina, Karifa Yao, Frank Nodarce, and Aldair Sanchez. Holding midfielders Dwayne Atkinson and Danny Rivera. Expected, right? Attacking midfielders here, Jose Quizera, Noah Fuson, and Augustine Rodriguez, with Leo Alfonso up top.
Jason, I mentioned last week on the show that when we saw the men that Cano was going to elect for this particular start, it was going to determine the tempo, the pace, and the strategy behind what he wanted to accomplish. Again, knowing that they were so dependent on a result from Westchester to begin with, we asked ourselves, was Cano going to go for it, or was he going to rotate heavily in the night here? What did you think of the overall setup of this, based on this initial lineup? Let's not talk about the result, because that's putting the cart in front of the horse. But you see this lineup come out, and does that scream Cano's going for it, or does that scream something else?
It's tough to say. Like you have a really interesting setup here for our holding midfielders, right? 2 players you would not expect to see there, Dwayne and Danny. I mean, I've definitely seen teams who will pair someone who's maybe, we'll say Danny as a fullback has a bit more of the defensive qualities, and then Dwayne has a bit more of the kind of almost a cam attacking prowess. So we clearly know that he can pass the ball and carry it forward, and so they're looking for some balance in that pivot. it's good to see Danny get some minutes, even if it's not in his natural position. I doubt that we'll see him there more once we have Zach and Clay healthy. I wonder also too, is this something that Kano's been working on in the background with Danny, or is this just a need? It makes me wonder, with how many injuries we have, it's hard to say if this is just, if everyone was healthy and he put out this lineup, I'd say he's probably like, I don't want to say like throwing it, but he's not necessarily going for the game. But considering the injuries we have, I almost feel like this is somewhat of a necessity. Speaking of injuries, we saw Clay Holstead on the streets doing some, on the ground reporting earlier this weekend. Saw him, we've got the scoop directly from you that he was going to be ready and available in the near future. So that initial injury, not as bad as we thought. My guess is, and based on the mobility we saw from him, he's probably 2 weeks out at maximum at this point. So the good news is we'll have Clay Holstead returning much sooner. Don't think he'll be available for this Hartford match on the weekend ahead, but good to see him nevertheless. Maybe we'll be surprised by something in training. He seems like a resilient young lad. But getting back to Danny and Dwayne, do you think that the other benefit to this is unlike maybe in the last match against Sacramento, where we saw a stylistic change with how they incorporated a back five line with Aldair and Frank kind of navigating some of those similar spaces and channels? Do you think that because we almost kind of kept the system in place better and it was a plug and play? Now, granted, completely different player profiles between Dwayne Atkinson and Hugo Bacharach. Let's not kid ourselves. Do we think that that's more of a sign of the system starting to click and players understanding that even if it's a different player in that role in the night, the job is the same? Yeah, I think what we saw is that, our players have started to get comfortable defending in a back four. So we put them back into a back four. And so we saw a bit more of a solid defensive performance on the night there. And then from there, you have, somewhat, like you said, plug and play. Maybe they're not exactly the right characteristics or styles, but these are all soccer players, right? They know how to kick and pass the ball. So put them in a position, give them some instructions, and you have a system where everyone else kind of knows what they're doing. And we honestly didn't look that bad in the first half with them in the holding midfielder position there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of attacking momentum there. Well, yeah, here's Coach Kano's words on Danny and Dwayne specifically.
It was some of the best all year. It was really enjoyable to watch Dwayne play deeper in center midfield. I thought he dictated a lot. He has a lot of ideas. He was spraying the ball everywhere. Danny had limited minutes this year. I thought he played well. So, yeah, I thought up until that moment, I don't think they had much. I thought all they had was set pieces, and we want to be aggressive, but we have to not give away unnecessary fouls. I know they want to be aggressive and they're trying to do what we're asking, but you have to be calm and composed in those moments.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that at length in the next segment. Dwayne Atkinson making his fourth start of the season. Danny Rivera making his second career start with the club. Obviously, it's his first USL Cup career, but again, maybe a player we thought we'd see more in this tournament. CJ Williams, finally, we're getting to see him back on the pitch after a 13-game injury absence. The player we didn't see, though, Jason, and we probably won't see him now, no Jacob Castro. Was this the final swan song? Because is there a world where if we rotate Castro out at the end of the season, that we just never see him actually on the pitch as an RIFC keeper? Barring any sort of injury, yeah, I don't see us seeing a keeper at all. It kind of makes me wonder, like, are they clearly we are best with Koke in net, right? He fits the style that we play. He's a great keeper. Like, there's really no better option for us. However, in some of these cup games, like, you want to showcase that and give your backup keeper an opportunity to play for various reasons to kind of keep them fresh. But then also there's always potential to move players on, right? You could sell value. But then also just give your keeper a rest. I mean, Koke's not getting any younger. So I just hope that it doesn't come back to haunt us, that we kind of wear him out. We shall see, but we've got to go to break. And when we return, we're going to bring up the biggest storylines out of the Prinx Tire Cup action on the weekend. Don't go anywhere. It's the Raising Anchor Soccer Show. Fans, as the weather becomes more and more unpredictable, be sure to check out 990 WBOB's weather page for all your temperature, storm, and travel info. Stay prepared for whatever Mother Nature has in store with the 990 WBOB weather page.
Now, let's get back to the Raising Anchor Soccer Show on 990 WBOB with Matt Entrican and Jason Carey.
Taking a look here at the goal scorers on the night. Augustine Petit Rodriguez here in the 19th minute slots home a pass from Quizera right between the legs of the defenders. I think there was a slight deflection there, but still made its way to that bottom corner. Great to see him get on the score sheet.
We've been talking for months now. Fans have been asking us, when will Pitti take the next step, find a goal for himself? Obviously, I think 3 assists on the season, but no goals yet to show for it. I think this is a huge turning point in his season for himself. Even if it wasn't in league play, you got to ask yourself, the combination of it, right time, right place. It's a thing that we don't see enough of from him, and now that I've seen it, I want more. But more specifically, I want to talk about the assist to that as well. Jojea back out on the right side. He may have had an early night, but still, he looked good. It was reminiscent of what he's been so successful for out on that right side. Surely the experiment, minus injuries, is over about keeping him on the left. I know we can do the rotate in the middle of the game and throw defenses off. I'm fine with that, but if this has got to be yet another case to be made that Quizera has to predominantly stay on the right.
Yeah, I think this performance shows that Quizera has found a spot here with us in the right wing. And like you said, there's always opportunities depending upon the way attacks pan out for them to be flexible and move around. But he's looked the most lethal for us from that, coming from that right wing, being able to either shoot, because he's hit some golazos from there, or even just to get in there and kind of cause some havoc, dribble, and pass to one of the teammates.
Unfortunately, the goal was short-lived as a go-ahead victory for Rhode Island FC, as Juan Carlos Obregon Jr. would have different ideas on the night. Jason, let's set this picture and let's talk this out. This only happens because of a Karifa Yao emergency takedown that gives them a dangerous look at goal mouth from the top of the box.
Definitely. And Kano just talked about it too, about them wanting to be aggressive and defending. But I think if you look at this goal, you kind of have to give Obregon his flowers. This was a phenomenal free kick. He finds the top right corner with a spectacular free kick that really nothing you can't really fault Koke for that, unless he knew that's where it was going to go. And even then it was top bins, as they say.
I don't like that Obregon Jr. continues to find ways to score against this club.
He's been a bit of a boogeyman for us at times. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he may across all competitions, because unfortunately so much of it has come from USL 1. But I think him and Demus might be our 2 main problematic strikers when we're going up against them. We'll talk at length about some of the other stuff, but really quickly, most of the game from then on, it becomes a 1-1. Obviously some big moments, but from a scoring perspective, nothing else happens despite some really good looks at goal from both sides of the teams. Getting into the penalties, though, Rhode Island FC does win 4-3 on those after an incredible save from Koke Vegas to start things off. But then cosmic justice, my friend, is restored. Obregon Jr. going wide and missing the net. That's what you like to see after a player who caused us so many problems on the night. Not just the goal. We're talking the red card. We're talking almost just harassing the back line for the entirety of 90 minutes. It was almost just like he needed to miss that for the world to feel like justice can still be around.
Yeah, and it's really good, too, to see if we kind of look quickly at RI's scoring summary here. Scardina showed up, buried it. Same with Shapiro Thompson and then Leo Alfonso. JJ Williams actually did take a good penalty. He put it towards the bottom corner. It's just, unfortunately, it was saved. And then the Capitan himself, Koke Vegas, steps up and just passes it to the bottom opposite corner.
I know it is possible. Obviously, I know it is allowed. I don't think I've ever seen a keeper step up unless it's their natural time in the order, which is, closer to the end. Maybe not 11th, but maybe 9th. And it goes from there. I don't think I've ever seen a keeper taking it at the 5th, because arguably the most important spot on the night, typically, for how these can go. It was just magical. We'll talk about that in a second. Want to get back into what Kano mentioned when we had his interview a second ago. He mentioned that this was some of the best football he's seen all season. Do we subscribe to that beyond the Hollywood ending for Koke and knowing that he was playing through a lot of injuries on this squad?
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn made it clear they had 2 jobs on the night here, kind of pressure our back line with route one tactics, use speed and pace to try and dominate the set piece tactics. They were definitely causing us some problems there in the back line. You know, and they've won 10 corners on the night, with the majority of them being generated from ill-attempted crosses, which were almost triple RIFCs on the night. Despite being a man down basically for half the game, this match was more of RIFC again, shooting themselves in the foot with poor finishing, despite some high-quality chances with shots. I wouldn't be surprised to find a high XG here with 5 shots on target and 11 of 19 from inside the box. How many times have we seen this team to be so unlucky with their chances? I mean, I don't want to be too hard on them because they did play down a man.
Oh yeah,
they still
no,
created a lot of good chances. I'm actually very happy with this performance, but it also feels like we kind of probably should have won this too.
Almost to that point too. Like if you look at how they held them, and still, like, they didn't just turtle for the rest of the game. Like they still took it to Brooklyn. You almost would say like these were evenly matched teams, but only once Rhode Island went down a person on the night, right?
Yeah,
so
to like fight with one hand tied behind the back.
Exactly. I don't want to call it a handicap, but I also have to agree with Kano and what you had said a second ago about talking about discipline plaguing this team right now. From their last 5 matches, Jason, 84 fouls. They're averaging right now 16.8 fouls per match. It's something this team's going to have to figure out how to balance between this aggressive play style and the direction that they want to go moving forward.
Yeah, and I think this is just kind of a recent moment in time, and I think we should see this kind of balance itself out. This kind of happened in the first year too, right? Kano's making a talking point here. RFC is currently 12th overall around the league, with very much a middle of the table place where you want to be, but I'd imagine that getting a red card might be at the start of the second half, only going to increase some emergency defending and testing attitudes. So they kind of put themselves in a position where like fouls just kind of had to happen there.
But did they actually put themselves in that position? Because
I mean, or were they put in that
or
position?
did Guido Gonzalez Jr. make himself the man of the match and put them in that position?
I know we joke about the levels of the level of reffing in the championship, but it's really hard not to make this a talking point, and I think we have to mention it this time. There are times, and we've been correct, we have some fans and friends who are refs, and sometimes we'll say, hey, like, I know you guys are frustrated as fans, but those are fine refs, and we're always willing to walk back our feelings if they'll explain to us why.
Unless it's Natalie Simon.
Yeah,
I will be a stan of hers for life.
But this was a very poorly officiated match.
Probably the most poorly.
There's no other way around it.
Well, and here's the weird thing is like
even the commentators were like, yeah, that wasn't even a foul.
So, you know, normally we do research on the refs ahead of time. We're familiar with a majority of the names, even when we see them as listed as 4th official or one of the ARs. Like we're starting to develop a good understanding when these names, you know, crop up in these matches. I didn't see this name, and I didn't, because we had too many podcasts to do that week as well. I didn't really put like any research into it. So I just assumed either he was a lower league ref coming up to a big moment in tournament play, or maybe he was like in NWSL or in the women's game, because I had never seen this name before amongst championship squads. Well, guess what? This guy hasn't overseen a championship match of any kind since 2019. And you know why, Jason? Because he's been reffing at the highest level of soccer in America. He has been an MLS ref since 2019. Not only has he been reffing MLS games, he also won the U.S. Soccer's Referee of the Year in 2024. This is a ref that's supposed to be at the highest echelon of quality of ref opportunities, and somehow we got that on the night. So when you tell me that you're excited about us moving up to Division 1 and we're supposed to get all these new resources and better access to things like better refs, I don't see it happening, because if anything, it's going to get worse.
I mean, sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better.
Let's talk about the red cards in question. First, starting off with Frank Nodarse's. His night was over just 5 minutes into the second half after collecting a pass from Karifa Yao, cycling the ball. He gets the dribble past Obregon Jr. and starts to take off. Obregon then reaching out, grabbing a bit of jersey, grabbing a bit of an arm. They trade hands, touching shoulder to arm after the reach out, and then Obregon Jr. makes a meal out of it, claiming that he's been struck in the face, earning Nodarse a second yellow and an ejection. Make that make sense to me, Jason. Make that make sense.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it doesn't. I mean, you know, Darce picked up his first on the 35th there. Some kind of poor decision making, from the team a lot in regards to defensive. They, Brooklyn, to their credit, we're realizing, these long balls over the top, the speed that they have were really causing us some problems, and the calls were going their way. So it's just kind of frustrating to see, especially because you watch that replay and at best he makes connection with his shoulder.
Which then the question I have for you on that then is this card only coming out because of the believed contact to the face? Because the way I understand the game, Frank Darcy has the ball. He's dribbling. Obregon Jr. is the one holding on him, trying to claw back and get that. To me, if I'm looking at this as a casual, if I'm only half invested in the game, I'm standing in the fans, my initial reaction is, well, at best, that's persistent infringement from Obregon Jr., unless there's that facial contact. Isn't that what this would be?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a red. It's not even a yellow. I mean, Obregon is harassing him as he's trying to kind of pull forward, and it's just a really bad call from Guido here. I mean, we have extra linesmen as well too. I don't know why none of them could.
Yeah, fourth officials right there. The AR's on that side of the pitch for that moment in time. It doesn't make sense. Do we give Obregon Jr. the credit for selling the acting? Like, does he need to go now teach acting at a local community college? Because it just doesn't make sense to me how this could have even happened. And more so to it then, Jason, does something need to happen as a repercussion in retro for this simulation from Obregon Jr.? Like, does RIFC need to make a case that had they been able to keep Nadarsi on the pitch, that they might have found a winning goal in regular time? I know that wouldn't have changed the results overall in the standings, but you didn't know that at the time. Does Obregon Jr. or Brooklyn FC, are they responsible for some sort of penalty as a result of that? Because if that continues to happen, it's going to diminish the quality of the league.
So I would think let's say this was a regular game or like a league game. I would think that you would, I don't know if it'd be fair, but like you could just take the yellow from Frank and give it to Obregon. And that way it's accumulated towards their yellow so they can still earn a suspension. The problem is this is a cup game though. So at that point, it's really not going to do anything because those reset, maybe just to kind of, I don't know, mess up their transfer market stats that they have more yellows. I don't know. But there should be some sort of discipline here. I don't know if this is punishing the team, because these players are played so little. Like it obviously we need to kind of correct the action, but like punishing the team so that they kind of then take the action down, trickle down to the player, and maybe there can be some kind of punishment or fine from there.
Do you do a financial fine at that point? Because like you're right, hurting the player isn't gonna be what's good for the league.
Yeah,
as well.
It's not like these are millionaires. So
what would you do in these moments?
I mean, it may
suspend him for his opening game of the next cup?
For the next one, possibly. Like, hey, your acting skills, caused another player to miss a match, so now it's your turn. You miss the next the match because of that.
We talked about should the ref also face some sort of punishment for this poor officiating, because the game completely got out of control. The problem is, and we've seen this in bigger, better leagues like Premier League, they send them down a league. We don't want this guy in the championship at this point, right?
I mean, maybe all the way down to League One or USL 2. I don't know. Maybe he's got to start from the bottom, work his way back up. Prove his worth.
Really quickly, we got to move on though. Let's talk about Grant's red because that's the second spoiler of the night. This one almost feels even weirder to a certain extent.
Yeah, and so in the dying seconds, Grant Stoneman comes in doing a flying ninja kick, trying to do his best Latin impressing, and kind of just misses the ball. AST sent a cross in, but it was deflected off a Brooklyn player. And if you watch the way a ball, when it hits a player, it kind of changes the trajectory.
Jason, we don't need to explain physics to our fans. They know how that works. Apparently, who doesn't know is Guido Gonzalez Jr. He might need to go back to school. Maybe he can attend that acting class we mentioned a second ago. Stoneman, who's been watching, keep in mind, he's been on the bench this entire game, watching bad call after bad call. And to Guido's credit, he was bad for both teams. I mean, he was missing very bad tackles, very late challenges on both sides.
Challenges from our from our players. They're like, ooh.
It's what saw Marlon LeBlanc get a yellow card in addition to Cano Smith, and you better believe that I'm updating the graphics package to include his new yellow card next week on the show. but it was not good at all. So Stoneman now coming into the game, it's the dying seconds. The whistle's going to get blown at the start of this goal kick, and Stoneman's out of his mind, not being able to understand, not being able to comprehend that this isn't being called for a corner kick. He runs by the ref, says something, he smiles and keeps running, and Gonzalez just blows. Like it's just over for him.
It was actually really funny because he was so angry that he's discombobulated. He grabs out his yellow, drops it, and then like trying to find his red, like he forgot where it was. And then, of course, because they all knew he was not reffing, Stoneman was like, whatever, of course it's going to happen, and ends up getting a high five on his way off the pitch from Cano.
Now, I'll say this because we did get a couple questions in the mailbag about it, so just want to address it in this segment. Some mixed questions as to why it was a straight red card. Per IFAB's Rule 12, an initial instinctive disagreement is usually accepted, but clear, continual, or sarcastic arguing by word, action, or gesture is a cautionable offense. This includes sarcastically clapping or persistently showing a lack of respect. So these are the moments where like a challenge can go from, all right, you had your initial outburst, you're continuing it, and now I'm going to have to warn you with a yellow card. Wait, hold on. It changes and it crosses the line, which is something you do not want to see when it becomes offensive, insulting, or abusive. And that is when the ref has no choice but to issue a red card. So the question now becomes, Jason, was what Grant Stoneman, whatever he said and as he ran off, was it offensive, insulting, or abusive? Because that's the pressure test here.
I mean, unless they release the port, we'll never know. Or if we can ask Grant and he'll let us, hey, Grant, off the record, what did you say?
But honestly, do we think that this was an ego hit to Guido, or do you think Grant actually earned this? Because to me, as much as we've been kind of critical of Stoneman lately, he's always been a journeyman. He's always been a leader in this locker room. He's always been level-headed, even in these kinds of situations and moments. I don't see a world where Stoneman would stupidly, even in that moment, do something to earn a red card needlessly.
I think it was probably some sarcastic comments, and then Guido just kind of maybe, like you said, maybe took a bit of an ego hit in there and just used his discretion to upgrade it to a red card. So now RIFC defenders Frank Nodarce and Grant Stoneman are both going to be unavailable for the 2027 USL Cup matches, assuming they're still with RIFC. Just so for those of you know, if they were for some reason to continue with another team, those will still carry over. But I'm curious, that was a very poor performance. Do we know if there's any ability for us to kind of call out, question those, see if we can get any of that reviewed or overturned? There's still plenty of time for that to.
Yeah, so I reached out to the team. They do not have an answer at this moment, but I did reach into some rules. If they are going to do it, they have to treat it the same way they would before the next match. So which means these things need to move quickly. There are timelines to it. Even though there is no future Prinx Tires Cup match for Rhode Island FC, there still are deadlines for them to do that.
So as long as we get a different sponsor, then it doesn't count. They just can't play a Prinx Cup.
Not sure how that works, buddy. Not sure how that works. So I can't imagine that they won't be charging or requesting a challenge, against Frank Nodarce's send-off. I don't think it's as black and white for Grant Stoneman's because all Guido Gonzalez Jr. has to say is that it was abusive to me. I think that's too subjective. And so maybe that gets under review because of what happened. But there's not enough in it for me to see Stoneman's overturned. I do think that as long as Rhode Island FC made the active decision, because remember, it costs something like $3,000 to make the challenge. And if you lose it, you don't get that money back. So
yeah, I guess that's also because it's not just the next match and it's so far in the future. Almost that's wonderful. One of those things, whatever. We'll just hope we have enough defenders next year to
But we've got to go to break. And when we return, we've got the mailbag. Don't go anywhere. It's the Raising Anchor Soccer Show.
Now, let's get back to the Raising Anchor Soccer Show on 990 WBOB with Matt Entrican and Jason Carey.
Back here on the Raising Anchor Soccer Show. Didn't get to talk about Koke Vegas' first professional goalkeeping kick in the penalty shootout, but you were already there. You know it. Instead, we're going to quickly discuss this conversation that's been happening on Reddit about attendance. Jason, what's your 30-second take on it?
I see a lot of the same answers. Parents are not happy about 7:30 kickoff. It is 50%, if not more, of the answers. We've heard this anecdotally from our friends, and just kind of like reiterating that, because I know sometimes the club listens because they get mad at us when they don't like what we say. It like there are things like a weather that people have been saying, can't do anything about that. World Cup, maybe some better scheduling could have been around there, but you know, it is what it is at this point. But yeah, clearly the 7:30, combine that with just the fact that like it's been raining a lot for some reason on Saturdays.
And we've been told from the front office that they will not be doing 7:30 p.m. games next season. So that doesn't mean it's 4 p.m. games. That could just mean 7 p.m. games again. But they are going to be looking at that very closely. I would also argue, too, that like when you compare the numbers, because what started is the decline in attendance, but the summer months are always our strongest. And we're really just entering that, having not played a home game in the month of June in front of Rhode Island FC fans. So we have all these games to kind of catch that up. I would say if we really want to start getting worried about attendance, it needs to happen around the September break when kids are back in school and maybe some other things are going on. That's when we should be alerted. But moving on, Alan P. writes in, was listening to Soccer Wise and heard that FIFA pays professional clubs around $10,000 a match played, and that Miami FC is set to make around $70,000 for their players' contributions in the World Cup. Does USL need to do more to get higher profile players into the league?
To a certain extent, once we get D1 status, I think that'll kind of just naturally happen over time. But at the same time, I don't think we need to sacrifice our teams for just like getting players. I think if we continue to build strong and competitive league, it's just naturally going to happen.
I looked at leagues that were below us in the rankings when it came to FIFA evaluations. The Uzbekistan Super League, Spanish Third Division, and the Qatar Super League, or Stars League, excuse me, you could argue we're all on the same playing level as us. So there were a couple of players that represented their national teams in those particular ways.
Joe P here saying, this was by far the worst job by a referee that I've seen in years of playing and watching the game. You know, it is bad when each coach gets a yellow card for complaining, but the game overall was a good morale boost going into the Hartford match.
I mean, hey, listen, you're not wrong about anything. The whole point now is that we never see him again. Rich W writes in, hey, Matt, just want to remind you that RFC practices penalty kicks.
You know, it's so crazy. So RFC has now won both penalty shootouts in 2026 Prinx Tires USL Cup campaign. So good for them. I almost wonder if, you know, there's a certain someone mentioning, like, do they practice penalty kicks? Maybe they got that
His
meme.
face is on the storyboard for them when they get angry.
They're like, and I took that personally.
if them hating me is what gets them going, then that's all that matters.
Yeah. Rachel H says, why is Jose Quizera getting pulled early in games?
In this particular case, I don't think there's anything to look at it just yet. We have a lot of firepower that we can put in the attacking midfielder and wing positions right now, less so in like the center holding midfielder roles. But I think in this case, it was just yellow card management. He got a card for dissent right after the Nadarce ejection. And I think what mattered at that moment was just making sure Quizera like was pulled and cooled down. James in the chat writes in, is Obregon Jr. more hated than Siaha now?
Oh, no, because you kind of,
you respect it.
I almost respect the like he's playing within the realm of the game, whereas Siaha just like, especially after the kind of the taunting afterwards, Obregon didn't like get up and immediately start laughing and be like, haha, I got away with one. He knew what he was doing, and he's unfortunately good at it. So. Stacy L saying here, I know we were down to 10 men, but after beating Brooklyn again, what does this result tell us about where Rhode Island FC stands in the Eastern Conference pecking order?
9th place, because we're forever 9th until it's time to get into the playoffs, and then we're Road Warriors once again.
I would chime in real quick and say full strength. I think we would have won in regular time.
I mean, again, 1-1 draw with a man down, and we had 4 starters not available. I think that this was an admirable performance. Jim S. writes in, did anyone impress you this weekend to earn a bigger role? It was great seeing Danny finally on the pitch. Viva Colombia.
I kind of agree with Coach. I think that I was kind of impressed with Busy. I thought that he would struggle in that role, but he seemed to do pretty well. I'd be curious to maybe see him try that once or twice more if we want a bit more of an attacking flair there as one of our holding midfielders. Chad B here says, do we think England can take down Argentina, or are we getting a rematch of the last World Cup final?
Anything is possible, Chad, but the story writers want the rematch. You know they do, and so that's what it's going to be, because it is never coming home.
I don't know. I think France versus England or 100-year war final could be fun. Anyways, guys, that's it for today's show. Appreciate y'all joining us. We will talk to you soon. Anchors up.
Anchors up.
You've been listening to the Raising Anchor Soccer Show. You can follow the show on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast and at Raising Anchor on Instagram. And be sure to check out and subscribe to Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen by searching for Raising Anchor. Make sure to check out all of our coverage over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage, including RIFC News at theblazingmusket.com. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask you to be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the show. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm your main man, Juju, and on behalf of the Raising Anchor crew, goodbye for now. And as always, we are Rhode Island FC.